Hello and welcome everybody to the first webinar of two for the Fleadh Forum. Believe it or not, this is our 12th year to celebrate the Fleadh Forum at the Galway Film Fair, and we've been blessed with amazing sunshine this year. I'm delighted to be here. My name is Sarah Dillon. I'm the development manager of the RAP Fund. I want to obviously thank our sponsors for these panels. We wouldn't be able to do them without them. So thank you obviously to the Fleadh itself, to Screen Skills Ireland, Screen Ireland and Screen Producers Ireland for backing us today. And I'd like to give a special thank you to Tracy O'Brien and Emma Scott at Screen Ireland for their help on this panel and expertise. If you'd like to join the conversation online, please use the hashtag #FleadhForum, and we'd be delighted to see your feedback during and after the panel. Also, we have a Q&A function here, so if you do want to ask questions, please pop them into the chat here and we'll make sure that we pass them on to Robert to give out to our expert panel. So my final job is actually to introduce Robert McCann Finn, who I think probably needs no introduction to a lot of us Irish filmmakers, is the managing director of Breakout Pictures, who have been champions of Irish filmmakers over the last year. He runs the company with his business partner, Nell Roddy. They've had a number of wonderful titles in the cinema recently. Broken Law was a huge success for them last year, and they released the documentary Fill In Its Songs for While I'm Away also. And they have a big premiere tonight, I think, with the Damien Dempsey documentary Love Yourself Today at the Fleadh. So he's a busy man. So we're delighted to have Robert here. So I'll bring Robert on and ask him to introduce our expert speakers. And thank you for joining us today. I hope you take a lot away from this conversation.
Thanks a million, Sarah. Much appreciated, especially for that opening. Again, like we're here today to discuss the Irish cinema experience and what does the future hold. And as Sarah said, we have a fantastic panel who actually survive and thrive by attracting audiences into their cinemas. It's a tough one day to day to attract audiences into cinema, but they still try. Firstly, we have the wonderful Charlene Lydon, who's head of programming of the Lighthouse and Palaw Cinema. She's worked for over 10 years now, I think, Wellman Pictures, from script development, and she's now synonymous with the Lighthouse programming and bringing audiences to both locations. She's also a co-founder of the Cinema Book Club, a monthly podcast and discussion group. So she's cinema through and through. Also, we have Mark Anson. Mark is director of the Omniplex Group. And interesting fact is his first full role in the industry was in Galway in 1993. Which is only yesterday. Since then, he's overseen the launch of over 40 cinemas in the island, including coming back home, you might say, to the 2019 opening of the cinema in Salt Hill, Galway. A passionate cinephile, is single-minded about the cinematic experience and maintains that innovation as well as content will always be key to driving audiences and building success for his Omniplex group. And finally, we have Tracy O'Brien. Tracy O'Brien is part of the senior management from the Gate Cinemas. I think the Gate Cinemas are a really interesting mix of independent and multiplexed programming. They've been operating in Cork for over 20 years now across 3 locations. And I think they hold about 3 or 4 film festivals every year. Tracy began her career with the Gate in 2006 and holds a degree in marketing and business from the University of Limerick. So a super panel who deal with audience members every day who want to get into the cinema. So before we kind of talk about the future, I just want to talk about where we're at, considering in the middle of a near the end, touch wood, of a pandemic. When I was driving around Galway today and I saw the Salt Hill Cinema, I saw Palaw, and I went to the outdoor venues this evening, you do get emotional that we're kind of, feels like we're getting somewhere back to some normality, whatever that is. And Mark, you've kind of been a kind of unofficial spokesperson on getting cinemas back open. Can you tell us where we're at the moment and what are the next steps, so to speak?
Thanks, Rob. Thanks for having me on. And obviously, it's great to have cinemas back. They came back on the 8th of June this year, and there was a lot of work that had to be put in, yourself included, in talking to the department and convincing them with the guidelines that we had agreed last year that cinema is safe and cinema remains safe. One of the safest form, in my view, of indoor activity. Everybody is socially distanced 2 meters, and not one. I reckon there's been 1.5 million admissions back to the cinema in the island of Ireland since we reopened, the North reopening in late May. and cinemas in the Republic opening on the 8th of June, and not one COVID case has been reported in as a result of attending a cinema. And that is a statistic that just cannot be ignored. At the moment, we're operating at about 25% capacity, 2 meter social distancing, a cap of 50 people per screening. And really, it is very limiting. And I think we're going to have to start a discussion with the department to lift that cap to try and reduce the social distancing in cinemas. A lot of rural cinemas won't be able to continue much longer at the current restrictions. And 2 meter social distancing is not the norm in Europe. We see the UK having no social distancing. I think that's a little bit too much at this time, but certainly a step down to 1.5 meters or 1 meters, which is the norm in mainland Europe. 2 meter social distancing is not the preferred model. About 65% of cinemas in mainland Europe are operating at either 1 meter or 1.5 meter social distancing. That would get cinemas to a maximum capacity of between 50 and 75%, and then we're really back at a level that cinemas will be viable.
Okay, so but there's no kind of formal pathway yet. You're kind of still waiting to hear on what is happening next, I suppose.
Well, I think we have to pick our moment. The department are currently trying to get indoor dining back, and we have to take our position in the queue. I don't think that cinemas would be a focus until indoor dining comes back on Monday, and those guidelines have been issued. And any correspondence that we make with them now will just be shelved until the time that they do feel that they have enough resources to give our requests sufficient attention. And that time will come. It may be next week when we see indoor dining reopening and they have more resources available to consult with us. But there's no doubt that getting indoor dining open is on the critical path for the government and for the department. So I think next week would be an opportune moment to start those discussions again.
Yeah. And Charlene, has cinema changed forever, you think, post-COVID, or are we just in a funny moment?
I mean, it's probably changed in certain ways, and consumer habits have probably changed. But I just kind of feel like it's so early in the day, feels like forever, but we are still kind of weathering this storm. So, I mean, I wouldn't confidently say everything's changed forever until the dust is kind of settled. So what I do think is that the numbers that we've seen since reopening have been really encouraging. Maybe this week excluded because of the heat wave, but generally, and even, you know, we haven't had massive films or anything, but people have been coming back out. So that's really encouraging. I think there's a real engagement with pop culture that's kind of emerged even more, that people kind of know the big films now and they know the directors' names and, you know, all that kind of stuff, that I feel like people are talking about pop culture even more than usual, and people want to see things in the cinema. I've said this before, but I certainly don't feel like people want to spend another Saturday night on the couch watching a new film on VOD. I just don't. Cinema changes all the time. People's habits change all the time. It's up to us to be there and kind of give them the best experience possible. It's up to the filmmakers to make the good films. So once that ecosystem starts kind of getting back up and running again, I'm confident that if it changes, it doesn't mean it's like dead or over.
Yeah.
We've been through this before with video and television and all sorts of things. So
I'm too young to remember that, Charlene, but
I'm not.
And Tracy, I suppose we're open now, and I suppose this is the first time we've been open where, like, from a multiplex perspective, you're having big releases and they're on TiVo and the windows are all kind of blurred. Are you seeing a big change in habits, Tracy, since the kind of?
Not really. I think nothing beats the big screen experience. You know, like, you come to the cinema, yes, to see the movie, but you also come for the popcorn and the seating and that shared experience with all these strangers watching something in a dark room, you know. So as much as, you know, people are watching at home, certainly I think it was a long 6 months and people are happy to just get back out there, get into a cinema, have the aircon, and just experience a movie with everybody. And, you know, something to do outside of the house now as well. You know, you can bring your kids and you don't have to actually physically do stuff with them now. You just bring them into the cinema and you enjoy it, you know. We're getting a lot of that these past few weeks. But in terms of, I suppose, with us, what has changed is that we used to never do allocated seating. We're still a bit in the fence, but obviously it needs to be done at the moment. And we found that we staggered our show times a lot. So for the most part, we're getting 30 minutes between show start times. And people are a lot kind of calmer and more relaxed with that. Because there's so much more space in there, you're not having 5 shows starting within that 30 minutes. People are nice and chilled. They're coming in, they're getting so much more from the shop because they're, you know, they've time to kind of browse and see what they want to get. And granted, I think the popcorn brought a lot of people back first day as well. But you know, it's something that we found, gosh, this is possibly a way for the future, just to have those extra, you know, that added time between show times, and we're not really losing out on a whole pile of shows with it. So that's been really interesting from that perspective as well.
And Sharon, you mentioned the ecosystem there. Like Irish production, I think, has maintained a kind of a real busy level over the last, even during the last 18 months. It's like, what role is Irish cinema in that ecosystem? Do you think it's like a fundamental part of it, Charlene, or do you think it's just?
Yeah, I think it's a huge part. I mean, you don't develop a national cinema without the support of national cinemas. You know, I think Irish film does tend to travel well abroad, but I definitely feel like you need a homegrown audience. You need people who are interested. So like, if you put a load of bums on seats for a load of Irish films, you'll get more support for Irish films from the public, from the government, you know, from everywhere. That ecosystem has to be all about audience, really. So the only way to properly get to audiences, in my opinion, but I would say that, is via the cinema. And like, what goes hand in hand with that is the fanfare of a cinema release. You don't get that fanfare with a VOD release very often. So it's that a nice little premiere, you know, maybe a glass of wine afterwards for the audience or whatever, you know, all that kind of stuff. I think that bit of fanfare is so important for a film, launching a film properly. What you're doing tonight with the Damien Dempsey doc, like a nice big night out at the Fleadh, you know, launches things. I think cinemas are so important, and the thing to remember as well is that like cinemas support the films they're showing as well. So like, if you took out cinemas, you've got your VOD platforms to partner with distributors. And no offense to VOD platforms, but I think that cinemas really do put in work in making sure that people know about the film, and this is our film this week, and there's social media, there's newsletters, there's posters everywhere, you know. So I mean, it's a huge part of the ecosystem, but also it's sort of developing a new generation as well. So making sure that like we're inspiring younger people to enjoy films in the best possible way. Like, I see streams of young people coming in to see Wolfwalkers, and it couldn't make me feel better. Like, it's just so great. And that's been like, that came out in October or something. And, you know, we had a fair few in the door at Christmas time for Wolfwalkers, but now seeing people coming in again in the summer, it's just so nice. And you're like, you'd need to have a homegrown Irish audience. And I definitely feel like cinema is the way forward with that. Like, it's part of what a cinema, what a national cinema is literally people come together on like X date or that weekend to watch this film, and then that's what all the conversations are about. Yeah. That's how you do it, I think. So I think we're a huge part of it.
And Tracy, I mentioned at the beginning there about kind of the amount of festivals you have in the gate. Like, is it like one audience for a festival, or do you get a good crossover between the festivals and an Irish film audience, or are they two separate things? Or
we get kind of a solid base, I think, for a lot of our festivals, but our festivals are so varied. Like, you know, our customer base for a Japanese festival, it would be quite different to, say, the Cork International Film Festival and the French Film Festival. So you do get, they each have their own, I suppose, unique personalities. But at the same time, you know, just coming back to what Charlene was saying, there is such an incredible opportunity for Irish film, because we have, especially I think in Cork, when there's just such incredible talent down here, not to blow our own horn, but sure, I wouldn't be from Cork if I didn't, that, you know, just the talent that's here is just phenomenal. And just to see our Cork programs and our Irish programs, they will sell out, like, without a doubt. We know that they're going to sell out. And so it's the best opportunity for getting Irish film out there for us are these festivals, because people come, they see it, they see the talent, they see how good they are. And then, you know, when we have smaller than Irish releases, they're much quicker to come back in and spend their money on those. And as Charlene says, that's, you know, it's such a system that we just need to keep it ticking over and get the marketing out there then for them so that people are aware of them. So I think that's quite an issue sometimes, is that, you know, there's amazing things on screen, but you're just not getting, people just don't know about them, you know. But yeah, the festivals though, like, as I say, they're so unique, all of them, that...
Sorry, to try to go back to that point, it's the key point there. So why don't kind of audience know about it? Do you think that's more of a cinema job or more of a distribution job, or?
I think it's a combination, you know. A lot of people, everyone's aware of Marvel movies, you know. Yeah. They're aware of the bigger titles and the bigger studio releases, which are fantastic and amazing fun, and you know, they're what keep us ticking over a lot of the times. But, you know, a lot of people, unless they check out our times online or they go to our website or follow us on social media, they don't know about these releases. So it's both. It's both. You know, we all need to kind of do our part, I think, in getting the word out there.
I know at the moment, like, you're booking the film on a Monday and you program the time on Friday, and then is that too late, you think, or does that model change, or will it ever change, or will you always need that flexibility? You
need the flexibility, definitely. I mean, our amazing Margaret, as you know her well, like, she is generally spot on with programming. But, you know, sometimes something will just shock you. Like, when we opened, we were selling out The Conjuring and The Quiet Place for weeks, which we were really genuinely not expecting to do for that length of time. You need that flexibility to be able to pull things and move things and add shows, as you know, every week. But at the same time, we all have our release lists. We know what's coming up. We're booking them in weeks in advance. So there is plenty of opportunity there to get, you know, the trailers on screen and on your social media and on your websites and things. So it's just, you know, I suppose at the moment there's quite a lot. So we're doing it more week by week, but certainly, you know, as soon as we know we've something booked in, we're getting it out there and doing what we can for it.
Mark, just go back to kind of Irish cinema and the kind of ecosystem again. I suppose if you look across the water, it's kind of dominated by three big multinationals of View and Odeon and Cineworld, Picture House. And over here, kind of, that hasn't happened. Odeon have, I think, about 10 or 11 cinemas. View have 3 and Cineworld have 1. But over here, it's still dominated by yourselves, and IMC and Movies Ash and Independence. Why is that, I suppose, would be my first question. Why hasn't that model replicated over here yet? And do you think will it eventually happen where we'll have a kind of a multinational system over here? Or?
The market is still largely indigenous over here. I think you'd know better than I would. I reckon at 65%, 70% of the cinema screens are Irish owned and Irish operated, and that's a great position to be in. I mean, it's akin to what's happening in France. And Ireland is slightly ahead of France in terms of the number of visits per year, but because it's indigenous, it means that cinemas are present in a lot more rural towns and villages around Ireland than you would see in the UK. I mean, you wouldn't see in the likes of Monaghan and Longford and Roscommon in towns of that size, or even towns 10 times that size in the UK, where one of those big multiples would go into a town. So cinema dies as an art form in those what would be a major city in Ireland. In the UK, they're a smallish town, and cinema dies as an art form, and people lose the habit of going to the cinema. And that's what cinema going is. It is habit forming. You're introduced to it at an early age, and you continue through your 20s and your 30s. Typically in Ireland, as with every cinema goer, when you hit 35, whether life becomes complicated and we lose you for a few years until after parenthood and maybe into retirement, and you come back. But up until 35, you're still very much one of our core cinema goers. So kids clubs all around the country have cheaper prices for parents to introduce their kids to cinema at an early age and get them into that habit. So it is a life-forming habit that people get into from a very, very early age in Ireland. And maybe that's not as prevalent across the water.
I think that point is actually really interesting, what you're saying about kind of the access to rural Ireland you might necessarily have in the UK. Is it a different audience you find, let's say, from Rathmines, or is it just a kind of a smaller micro Rathmines audience? Or
I mean, yeah, it's definitely a different audience. Art house or independent or niche pictures tend not to work in rural towns, and that's just population based, because the population that are interested in those movies cannot sustain a release on a regular basis. And we've tried to introduce art house movies into the more rural of towns around Ireland, and it's a tough sell, to be honest. It is commercial. They are commercially minded, and it is more of the mainstream is what is absorbed, or that's where you sell your cinema tickets in rural Ireland. Yes, absolutely.
and so just going back to that rural point up, I think like Salthill's, I know that's not Salthill, you can call a rural town by a long way, but that's done really well for independent audiences for you, really, hasn't it?
Yeah, well, Galway, it's the second cinema I've opened in Galway, and Galway has always been a thriving cinema town, not only for mainstream cinemas, but also for art house and niche pictures, independent pictures, Irish pictures. It's a great student city, and absolutely fantastic in terms of the breadth of film that they want to see in Galway.
And Tracy, I suppose when you speak about Cork and Irish film, you cannot but mention the Young Offenders as a
Absolutely.
That worked in Cork. Like, what made the Young Offenders such a box office smash? Was it a campaign, the film, or just the right time, right place, or a combination of everything?
I think you just said it there. Right time, right place. It was such a fabulous movie. You know, it had that brilliant Cork humor, but that translated really well, I think. It was really heartfelt, really funny, and just a really, really good movie, you know. And the two guys were insanely likable. You know, you don't get, you know, your TV series out of your movie unless they are that likable, you know, those two characters. And I think people could, especially in Cork anyway, people really resonated with it, and they could, you know, I remember my own dad went to see it, and he wouldn't be a big cinema goer by any means at all. And for him, he just loved seeing it and being like, oh, geez, there's the English market. And I love browsing around that part. And, you know, especially in Cork, everyone just like, if there was kind of nearly a chance to try and like, possibly you might see yourself in the background or something, you know. So I think that was a big part of it here in Cork. But no, it was a fantastic movie. It really was. It was just, they just loved it. Like we couldn't take it off the screen for months, like literally months we had it going.
And Charlene, we often actually talk about a lighthouse audience. I suppose to include like lighthouse IFI audience. We're talking about kind of what audience is this film for? It's kind of a discussion we speak a lot about in the industry. Like, what is the lighthouse audience in your mind? And I know it's very hard to articulate, but like, is it something that you've grown, do you think, or something that you've naturally attracted? Or
it's impossible to articulate, I think, what a lighthouse audience is, and because it's kind of instinct. So, like, you know, Rob, you and I probably talked about like your slate, and you'll name me 5 films, and I'll pick 2, and I'll go, that's really lighthouse, you know. And yeah. I don't know, like it just depends on the film, but like I suppose, like, first of all, Dublin kind of broadly aged like 18 to 40 or 35, you know, that sort of, you know, that's the audience. But I do think there's just something will click, you know, so there's an instinct, and I think it's sort of it was there when we took over, like, so 10 years ago, our Element Pictures took over the Lighthouse Cinema and reopened it after it had closed. And so there was a built-in audience there already that was kind of open to art house films and classic films and all of that stuff. So I think it's sort of like having your ears to the ground, getting the right film that feels right for your audience. And like, I consider myself my audience, so maybe I'm getting too old, but like, you know, I do kind of consider, like, I would be all over that now on opening night, dying to see it, and it served us well. And then the other thing is that our social media manager, David Kelly, is really also really involved in programming, and like we try to get him to see everything as early as possible, and he's got a great relationship online with our audience, so we listen all the time. What are they reacting to? What do they like the trailer for? What do they not like the trailer for? Does something have a cool poster visually? Is it going to entrance people? And like all of that stuff kind of pulls together. But that being said, like that's our kind of what you might call a core audience. But then we have our like matinee audience, which is kind of older people, who we don't really tend to program for, because they love coming in and seeing whatever mad joke we're showing and talking about it afterwards and going like, that was a bit mad, like, you know. So it's not like we put on the best exotic marigold hotel for them, like that's not what we do. So our audience is really broad. We show a lot of classic films. We've been kind of moving from nostalgic 80s to nostalgic 90s to now we're getting to nostalgic noughties, which is bonkers, but trying to kind of like make sure that you remember what the word classic is. Even though you're old, a classic is now something that's 10 years old. So we played Scott Pilgrim there last week as part of our Summer of Fun season, and it sold out a bunch of screenings because that's a classic for younger people. So, you know, all of this is about cultivating an audience, not forgetting that there's new audiences coming through the door all the time, watching what they like, watching what they respond to, keeping that in the back of your mind, and always reminding yourself that you're getting old and you have to remember what young people want.
And if I was a filmmaker, and if I had an independent film, would you feel that I need a festival run to find that audience, or is it possible to kind of just go straight to the market, or with a good trailer and a good poster and a good film?
And a good distributor, you know, like I think a festival run is great, like I really do. But I think that it's important to have a really good distributor, because distributor knows what to do. Self-distribution is obviously something that does happen, but it's really hard. Like it is really hard. I've spoken to so many filmmakers. It's so tough. It's tough to even convince people like me to put your film on screen if I don't know how you're going to present your film, you know. So a good poster is really important. I always say, get a stills photographer when you're shooting your film, for the love of God. Get a stills photographer for all your behind the scenes imagery, for when you go to make your poster, all that stuff. But yeah, I think a really good distributor knows, you know, what audience to go for. Like, so for example, if I'm talking to you, Robert, and you've got a great little film and it's a small enough film, but you think it's a good lighthouse film, you know that poster needs to be a certain type of poster. You make it kind of like beautiful or cool or whatever, and I'll be all over that. And you know, you just, you know, that's a kind of a niche audience, so it's okay to go for a niche poster. If you want to broaden it a bit, make it a big broad comedy, stick it in everywhere, you might make it more of a comedy poster, you know. So I think it's important to know who your audience is, and if you want to go small, to cater towards that niche. But if you want to go big, that's a whole other thing. But I do think in terms of like, if you've got a really good film, a festival run is really helpful, because you get early reviews and a bit of buzz going. But I would also say, like, getting a good distributor on board who knows what they're doing, who's kind of clued into how it all works, is really important.
This is when I get my number, is it?
Yeah, this is where contact Robert Finn.
I certainly agree with Charlene. The self-distribution, it doesn't work. You're trying to forge new relationships with an exhibitor that's for a one-off film, and that's so labor intensive. Whereas Rob and other Irish independent distributors, those relationships are already fully formed. And if a distributor comes to myself or Charlene or Tracy with a film, then it's the door is already half open, and Rob has all of our telephone numbers.
And we trust that he knows it's the right fit for our cinemas. You'd never lie to us.
Anson is an expert, but and just actually, Mark, touching briefly there, we just discussed that on Tommy Independent Film. We kind of talked about the VOD window and TVOD and all that, and like the data from Black Widow so far, it's still coming out, but there is still a big question mark. And I know from a distribution point of view, TVOD it's definitely not filling the cinema gap when cinemas were closed. Will the kind of new windows and TVOD or are there new windows in TVOD? That's been the first question. And will that open up more possibility for independent cinema to kind of reach a broader audience?
Yeah, I've a lot of views on windows, obviously, and one thing that I'm telling all distributors is the time to decide on new windows, post-pandemic windows, is not in the middle of a pandemic. This is not the time to make long-term decisions. Any decision on windows made now is a pandemic response. And I think cinemas have worked with distributors in trying to get content up on screen that has limited windows. I know that we could be closed in 3 days, like we were closed in December. Hopefully that won't happen. I see Charlene, worried look.
Sorry, my face is giving me away.
But you know, we don't know. This pandemic is not over. So every window that is being announced on a film by film basis is a pandemic response. And I think cinemas have an obligation to work with distributors because everybody needs cash flow, and this movie needs to have visibility on other mediums down the line, and that needs to be truncated. But I have absolutely no confidence that the current short windows will be where it ends post-pandemic, and those discussions will have to happen when cinemas are back trading at full occupancy, and most cinemas around the world have reopened. And obviously this is going to stem from the US, from New York and Los Angeles. As we know, if New York and Los Angeles is closed, well then the whole global release schedule closes down as well. But just in terms of Black Widow, never before have I 41% Friday to Saturday decline on opening weekend for a movie in the US, and a 67% decline on the second weekend is mind-bogglingly bad for a major blockbuster movie, regardless of how many cinemas are open in the US. Kind of the drop can only be put down to it being available on HBO Max.
And Tracy, kind of just following that from kind of the new marketplace, are there any kind of other trends that you are kind of seeing that will help? Like I think the window scenario will eventually help independent cinema, and kind of be it at the moment the 17 weeks that goes back lower. I think that will be very helpful for independent cinema. Outside of the windows though, are you seeing any other kind of international trends that you think will help independent cinema, or just help cinema audiences in general to get into cinema?
I do think, as Mark said, I do think it's going to go back a bit more normal, you know. But in terms of trends, like what we're seeing is that we do have some kind of cohorts of audiences that we're trying to get back. We had started quite a few years ago with our event cinema, and that has done extremely well. So it's just about building on, I think, what we've done pre-pandemic.
Just explain to kind of filmmakers who might not know what event cinema is.
So event cinema is, we do a lot of live streaming, so of ballets, operas. We do the exhibition on screen, art screenings, concerts, both live concerts and pre-recorded. So these would be premium priced, one night only affairs that, you know, we would have booked in for months in advance. So things like, you know, Andre Roux from Maastricht, or as I say, Royal Opera House screenings, things like that. So that's certainly a new type of cinema experience that we've been doing for the last number of years, and is one that, you know, it's taken a bit of time, but we have this really fabulous response to it, and a growing audience for every single production that we have. Like I know with the Royal Opera House screenings, we have so many customers that they will come in and just buy tickets to everything as soon as they're released, you know, and get their 10 tickets, and they have, you know, we see them like once a month for the next 10 months, you know. So that certainly is one trend that I think has a lot of potential for growth, certainly in Ireland. And, you know, it's just, we began it in Gay Cork first, but you know what, we brought it out to Mallow and Middleton, and yeah, it took a few screenings, but, and I think it's the same with Irish film, that once audiences are aware of what's there, and they, like as Mark says, it's habit, and you get into the habit of going to these type of screenings, and this is what you can see on the big screen. It's something new, it's something different, and you know, it's something that really people are starting to really come in and enjoy. And you know, it's yeah, they're premium priced, but listen, you'd be paying a hell of a lot more if you're trying to go to Maastricht to see Andre Rieu, and here he is for 15 quid on the big screen, you know. So it's something that I think definitely has so much potential.
And just on that, Charlene, I suppose on the trends, again, I say like the top 10 Lighthouse would be very different from the top 10 Omniplex or Gate. Are you kind of seeing different arcs or trends when it comes to kind of audience behavior, or?
No, it's interesting. Like we opened up, and like week 2 was another round, and like honestly could not have asked for a better film. It just felt like such a great Lighthouse film, and it's just done so well, like really well. So it's nice to see that people are coming out for, you know, foreign language films that are a bit challenging, but you know, also whatever, like, you know, has a movie star in it.
Very Irish team film though.
I know, yeah, we should all watch it. But like, and before that, like it was Parasite before we closed, you know, so like it is the kind of awards cycle. So it's funny, I didn't really quite realize how much that impacts things, because we're still seeing the benefit of the awards cycle when we're opening another round in July. We're like Oscar winner, and like that's what our people are interested in. So like we didn't play Black Widow, but we played another round, and I feel like that was the right choice for us and for our audience, and we packed screens, and we're still packing screens for another round. So yeah, I kind of just think I don't know, like I would say that audiences for those kinds of films are strengthening. And I think that ties back into what I said at the start about people being very engaged with pop culture, probably because we've all been on the internet way too much the past few years. But I think that's sort of it, really. It's that there is a stronger audience for that sort of cinema. In my cinemas anyway. I don't know how you guys feel, but that's really good news for us anyway.
I'm getting loads of questions here. I feel like Joe Duffy. I get loads of questions on the screen. Mark, would you ever invest in cinema, in a film directly, an independent production directly? That's one question. Yeah.
You're on mute.
You're on mute there, Mark, slightly.
Yeah, no, we have done in the past. Side Weta in After Midnight, which was filmed in Dalkey Castle in 1990. And I think that was a section 23. So that was our last foray into film production. Not to say it'll never happen again, but I think we're comfortable in our skin where we are now.
Okay, that's one good question. Second question, maybe Tracy from Jack Joyce. Thank you all for a great talk. Do you see as a whole, or anticipate any significant change to the film going experience in a different cinema landscape as well as one now also dealing with a pandemic? You know, it's a long question.
I don't know. You know what? As I said at the beginning, I think people come to the cinema for the experience, not just the movie. Like we have our wonderful tagline that we're more than just great movies, you know. And big movies need to be seen on the big screen. And you know, I suppose Mallow Middleton would be different to our Gate Cork site in that Mallow Middleton would be a lot more family oriented. But it's certainly in Gate Cork, it's about having diversity in your films and just like having things there for people to watch, you know, and people want to come in, see a good movie on the big screen with a popcorn, and it's the shared experience. I mean, I think people don't realize just how important socially that cinema is. You know, it's one of the few things that you can do in the evenings that's not involving alcohol or being out, you know, in a pub. You know, it's a really unique position to be in. And I know we have a lot of customers at all of our sites where cinema is their social life. You know, you come in and they might not speak to another single soul apart from the person selling their ticket, but it's still a little community that's inside there at that time. And I think it's incredibly important to keep it open and to keep it thriving for that.
I'm going to cut you off there quickly because the commercial break is coming and the questions are still flowing in. From another good question here, what audience, and it's actually probably to Charlene and Mark, it could be different answers quickly. What audience would you say is most resistant to coming back to cinema? want to take Charlene there first?
Do you know what? It's interesting because I was kind of thinking our senior audiences might be slow to come back, and they were last summer, but now they're coming back in their droves, which is really, really lovely to see. But they're all fully vaxxed now, and they're happy to get out of the house. So I was expecting that. I don't know, like, I mean, I don't know if there's any one particular section of our audience that hasn't come back, but I do think, you know, there are going to be people who feel not ready for a while. So I haven't felt that it's been one particular section of our audience.
Mark?
I'm not sure I can tell you who's not coming back, but I can certainly tell you who is coming back. And that's families and horror fans. I mean, all we saw for the first few weeks that we've been reopened is horror movie after horror movie and gory movie after gory movie. And they all sold out, well, at 50 people per screening, and families, parents couldn't wait to bring their kids and throw them back into the cinema and to enjoy that big screen experience. So I'd rather concentrate on who is coming back to the cinema.
Well, actually,
or horror films.
Well, from distribution, please. No. But just a quick one here, actually, the good question. What type of content or stories would you like to see more from Irish filmmakers? If you want to, Tracy, want to take that quickly? Tracy, start with Tracy.
I would like to see a lot more family product, because there is, you know, families do love coming to the cinema, you know, and bringing the kids, and as Mark said, it's a habit, you know, that you get into from a young age. So I would love to see, like with Wolfwalkers, just seeing that family content come in, because we do comedies and we do horrors extremely well. So it'd be nice to kind of change it up a bit, I think, and get a few nice family programs in there.
And of course, like Ireland's animation sector is incredibly strong at the moment, so you would feel there's opportunities there. Charlene?
Yeah. Well, I mean, look, there's obviously a thirst for Irish horror, but I do love a good horror myself, and I think we're just good storytellers. So, like, genre film, I think it's something that when we do it well, we do it really, really well. So, I would like to see a bit more genre filmmaking. Like, I love all the films that are coming out now. Grand, nothing bad to say about it, but like, it's a lot of drama. And I do personally love genre film, and I think that there is a real hunger for genre film, whether that's like a big comedy like The Young Offenders, or whether it's horror or like a good psychological thriller. I like it, and I think that we're good storytellers, and that suits us as a nation.
And Mark, quickly.
Yeah, I mean, I love Irish movie. I'll always date an Irish movie, but they are challenging to watch from a box office point of view. They are challenging. What I want to see is unusual people in usual situations, or normal people in unusual situations. I really need to see something. Cinema needs to spark debate, and that it has done throughout the last 100 years. Cinema sparks debate. If your movie isn't courting some kind of controversy, then people aren't going to sit up and take notice.
And I think actually we have the title of our next art. It's Normal People in Unusual Situations. I think that's a lovely way to finish off today's panel. And I think genuinely you've also been fantastic and really informative. Because as I said at the beginning, I don't think you get an opportunity to kind of speak to people who manage and run cinemas, who have to connect with audiences on a daily basis and face the kind of real commercial pressures. So thank you all. Thank you to Sarah for organising it, to the Rap Fund, Screen Ireland, Screen Producers Ireland, and of course the Galway Film Fair. And I hope everyone goes to Love Yourself this evening, which is sold out this evening. But they also enjoy the rest of Fleadh, and of course get back in the air-conditioned room of cinemas for the weekend. Thanks everyone.
Thank you. Thanks.